Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
You're watching Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Last Sunday, 17-year-old Husniza Saiful Nizam posted a video in which she voiced concerns about her male teacher's comments on rape. The teacher told the boys in the physical and health education class that Ain was in, if that they were to commit rape, they should target those above 18. Ain's video in exposing his comments was accompanied by the hashtag Make Schools Safer Place, Make Schools a Safer Place, and that's triggered a wider conversation about how we can begin to remedy the misogynistic cultural practices that are still present in our classrooms today. Tonight on the show, we're going to be speaking to an educationist, a gender equality advocate, about the steps we can take. But first, let's hear from Ain Husniza herself. Ain, good evening. Thank you so much for watching us, for joining us on the show tonight. Now, can I ask you, what made you feel that you needed to come out and expose what the teacher said? What prompted you to make the video in the first place?
Personally, for me, it was just my own self-righteousness. It was something that I myself viewed was wrong, and I needed to say something about it. Most people say that, like, or she just wants attention, I just want fame. But it's what I believe I should do. That's why I posted it.
Ain, that's, extraordinary for somebody of your age to be so fully aware of the parameters of what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. I don't mean to be condescending, but I really am impressed by your willingness not only to deal with this issue, but to deal with it in such a public fashion. Who was important in making the decisions to go public with this?
Like, for me to go in front?
Yeah, to make the video, to talk about these issues.
It was just what I believe, okay? It's my mindset. Like, I believe when I posted that TikTok, I just wanted to say about how this teacher was saying inappropriate things in class. And suddenly, a lot of other students came into the comments, told me about how they experienced injustice, and the teacher itself there was no action taken on the teacher themselves.
Right.
A lot of people told me, like, they don't understand why this is a bigger issue. And I believe with me, I have the privilege of knowing what is wrong and what is right. And I need to educate the other students on why this is such a big issue, and it's not just something that is normal.
Right. Well, what did you tell them when they said, they asked you why this is such a big issue, why you're championing this issue? What do you say to your peers, to your fellow classmates about why it's important to speak up when you hear comments like this?
You need to speak up when you see comments like this, because you don't want for this to be normalized, which unfortunately is normalized in our society nowadays. Like, a lot of other kids ask me, what makes this not acceptable? And I tell you, because this is one of the things that promote rape culture in our society right now. Things that people don't take seriously, but could actually lead to bigger and very bad results, such as the act of rape itself.
Ain, do you think this is largely a problem of men and boys? That men and boys don't understand the seriousness of the things they say and its impact, especially on other people, women in particular? Okay,
so what some people might take wrong when they hear my story is that I am trying to condemn men and boys. No, that is not what I want to do right now. I'm saying this is a problem about education itself. These boys, they don't know what's between right and what is wrong. Men are educated to be this way. It means that the education system itself has failed them. It is not because of their gender. No, it's because our education system, our adults, our educators have failed us at this point.
You're absolutely right, Ain. Adults have failed you, and we're sorry. We're trying to fix it. Let's try tonight. And I wanted to ask you that hashtag make schools a safer place. It's gone viral on Twitter. You know, in the days since you shared that video, have you heard similar stories? Have your peers shared similar stories about the treatment of female students? Was this something that resonated with other female students?
Sadly, I have actually accepted too much of kids in my same situation, and even worse than my situation, of kids that speak up and they tell this to their counseling teacher, but no action ever gets taken. And it's so sad because every time I read it, like I can't reply to every single story right now, which is why I want to start this movement to make other people care for each other, for us together to fight against this toxic mindset that has infected our society.
Ain, are you getting support from your teachers or some segments of the school, or are you finding hostility directed at you because they feel embarrassed by what you have revealed?
At first, I have to admit the backlash against me has been enormous. Not just from all over the country, but especially from my school itself. I understand this is something that you were taught as when you were younger. You thought this thing was normal, and therefore when I say it to you, you can't accept it. But it is already 2021. People can change and people can learn between what is right and wrong, even if you're an adult. And right now, after my father went and discussed with my principal and even my teacher themselves, they have agreed. They have accepted my view. They agree that I should do this. I should spread more awareness, because you see, if those adults can change, why can't other adults change? But I have to say, like right now, the backlash against me is mostly focused by my schoolmates. They have spread countless rumors against me, and even teachers themselves before this, they said that I was apparently, they talked about how I was autistic. They spread the rumor, and like they were trying to just validate about what I had to say. Like some religious teacher even said that I had inner trauma, and to this I have to say, why are you focusing the problem to me? They aren't even focusing to the problem of the teacher themselves, okay? And even if I am autistic, that doesn't mean autistic people are stupid, okay? And
yes. Yeah, I'm so sorry that you're going through so much and that you have to face the backlash, but we really appreciate you speaking out, and we are with you. Thank you for your time speaking with us tonight, and we appreciate you joining us on the show tonight. We're going to take a few minutes break, but more on Consider This in just a couple of minutes, so stay tuned.
Ramadan Al-Mubarak on demand.
Mana balik, Pak?
Genre film
kita bukan baju. Induknya adalah Melayu.
Balik kepada support system. This is orang yang membuat polisi.
Kalau itu yang dikehendaki, fine. Mungkin kita berbeza pandangan.
Tapi kita mempunyai kuasa yang boleh menentukan budaya di masa hadapan.
Polisi yang mesra wanita, sudah tentu dia akan datang daripada pemimpin wanita.
Perang COVID-19 masih belum berakhir. Dalam kita berusaha memutuskan rantaian wabak ini, kita jangan terpedaya dengan virus maklumat palsu. Simak fakta melalui www.astroawani.com atau aplikasi Astro Awani. Teruskan berdisiplin, ratakan lengkungan pandemik ini.
The third wave of COVID-19 has taken us by storm. There's no room to take anything lightly.
Hi, you're watching Consider This. I'm Melisa. Idris. With me is Sharaad, Kuttan. Now, if you've just joined us on the show, we're looking at how we can respond with more sensitivity to the revelations of gender-based inequality in schools. What do we need to know about the governance structures and leadership of schools to push-start necessary reforms? We speak now to Bernard Au, Program Manager at Pemimpin Global School Leaders. Bernard, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. Now, Pemimpin GSL, it's an organization that's really focused on improving school leadership and teacher quality, and you work hand in hand with faculty to achieve this. So I'm just wondering, Bernard, how much of the recent issues that have been highlighted in the media, you know, the rape comments made by the teacher, the period spot checks that we're hearing about, how much of that can be resolved by engaging school leadership and teachers?
Right. Thank you so much for having me tonight. So at Pemimpin GSL, we have been working with school leaders since 2018, and we have discussed difficult issues with them before, such as corporal punishment. And culturally, these things have been carried out over a long period of time. So it did take a while for some school leaders to internalize it. But we have also seen is that when they understand the negative effects of corporal punishment, they cannot unsee it anymore, and they decided to stop doing it. So I definitely think more training should be given to school leaders so that they are able to handle these emerging issues better.
But I understand, because of your work, that you might actually have a network of contacts within the education system. There are people who'd like to downplay these reports, suggest that maybe these are outliers, not the mainstream, that the exceptions to the rule, rather than a systemic problem. What's your understanding? Are these exceptions to the rule, or do we have a real problem within our school system as a whole?
Right. I think when I reflect back on my experience as a teacher, I cannot deny that these things have happened or have been tolerated before in a school environment. And I know a lot of environments in our schools are work in progress. And I've taught 13 to 7-year-old kids, right? And kids as well, they would make inappropriate jokes to their peers. And as a teacher, when I look back, I shouldn't be just stopping that action during that instant, but I should also be teaching them to do better than that, to understand that if some of our peers are a little bit different, we need to accept it instead of criticize them in the class or in school.
Right, that's a very good point, and I'm glad that you've brought that up. I'm hoping teachers tonight would also have similar insights. But can I just ask you, talking about teachers and the faculty, if you were to compare that to, say, the police are said to have this, quote-unquote blue wall culture of silence or not reporting misconduct to protect the institution over the public that it serves, and you compare that to schools and teachers, is what we're witnessing in schools, is this what we're witnessing in schools too about teachers?
Right, I think in schools, right, although there are some SOPs on what should be done by the teachers, but I think it can be laid out clearer, and all teachers should be trained to respond accordingly when these things happen. I definitely think the implementation has room for improvement, especially now that the issues are brought up by students like Ain. I believe there's a greater push and pressure for authorities and schools to handle these issues well, to make sure that these issues are not taken lightly.
Bernard, do you think that there is a consensus about some of these issues, especially when it comes to the differences or the similarities between boys and girls? Are there cultural norms and ways of thinking about girls and boys that are really deeply cultural in nature, that might been, against pedagogical values, but are still, because they're so deeply ingrained culturally, might persist. How is it possible to break through some of these cultural norms that exist, within the school system?
Yeah. So I really think that there needs to be continuous in-service training for our teachers first, because teachers, we cannot be using what we have learned 10 years or 20 years ago to be teaching our kids today, right? They need to be aware and taught how to handle these emerging cases better, such as mental health issues, corporal punishment, and misconducts like this, right? Which are often treated as a taboo topic. So I think we need constant, meaningful upskilling, which is not a culture in our schools yet.
Right, okay. So,
and I also want to point out that it takes a village to raise a child, that it's not only the school's responsibility to solve this, it's also every one of us in the community, which includes parents, adults, working professionals, and community at large. Instead of waiting for other people to do it, we need to be educating our kids about how to protect themselves and learn to call this out when it happens. Okay. Yeah, we need to educate ourselves so that this cannot be tolerated any longer.
Okay, so your point is that we can address the issue at hand through continuous training and upskilling. And I'm just wondering, on that point, Bernard, teachers often are in the teaching profession lifelong. They're often, working decades in a job. Is that a barrier to addressing the issue of gender inequality and some of the misogynistic cultural practices that we've seen oppress children in general, but specifically girls in the classrooms?
Right. I think it doesn't, even if someone has been working there for a long time, if they can be trained and they can be enlightened, and if they understand the negative effects of these things that are happening in kids, they will be able to help to solve this issue in schools.
But it seems ironic in part because, the perception is that schools and the education system have a high level of women participating as teachers, as principals, as educators, and that perhaps they, more than anybody else, would be attentive to the issues of gender inequality and prejudice or misogyny. Where, in your experience, is the balance between professionals, teachers and principals, between men and women? Do the men dominate? Does male culture dominate even when women might be the bulk of the staff?
Majority.
Yeah. I think even though majority of our teachers are women, but we can see that a lot of principals or positions with higher power are men. So I definitely think there is imbalance right there. Yeah, and I definitely think that this can be done better.
Okay, Bernard, thank you for joining us on the show tonight. Good luck with all the good work that Pemimpin GSL is doing. Thank you for your time. We're going to take another quick break here on Consider This, but after this, we'll be speaking to a gender equality advocate from AWAM. Stay tuned.
Najib vowed that he will continue to fight
in order to the world. Induknya adalah Melayu.
Balik kepada support system. This is extreme action. Polisi.
Kalau itu yang dikehendaki, fine. Mungkin kita berbeza pandangan.
Tapi kita mempunyai kuasa yang boleh menentukan budaya di masa hadapan.
Polisi yang mesra wanita, sudah tentu dia akan datang daripada pemimpin wanita.
Perang COVID-19 masih belum berakhir. Dalam kita berusaha memutuskan rantaian wabak ini, kita jangan terpedaya dengan virus maklumat palsu. Simak fakta melalui www.astroawani.com atau aplikasi Astro Awani. Teruskan berdisiplin, ratakan lengkungan pandemik ini.
The third wave of COVID-19 has taken us by storm. There's no room to take anything lightly. Everyone must follow all the steps to stop the spread of COVID-19. Social distancing, face masks, follow these steps, this SOP with the utmost discipline. Together, we can flatten the curve.
Bila sentuh soal berita, tiada masa untuk tunggu. Kepada anda kami bawakan fakta. susulan dan kupasan yang terkini. Tiada drama dan tiada pengulangan. Usah tunggu lama-lama. Awani 7.45 lebih awal dari biasa.
Kini berwajah baru.
Ini pula susulan khas pesawat Back Air di Kazakhstan. Pesawat berkenaan dilaporkan tergelincir 2 kali.
Notifikasi berita terkini dan navigasi mudah. Podcast dikemas kini dengan berita dan program.
Rebirth. Hi, thanks so much for staying with Sharaad and I on Consider This. Last Sunday, 17-year-old Husniza posted a video in which she voiced concerns about her male teacher's comments on rape. Now, is this incident simply a reflection of already existing gender inequality, misogyny and patriarchal norms in society? Or can schools be the vanguard for change? Betty Yeoh is one of the founding members of the NGO All Women's Action Society, or better known as AWAM. Betty has over 30 years of experience working to combat sexual harassment in organizations and educational institutions. She joins us on the line now. Betty, good evening. Now, what does it tell you, Betty, about the pushback against patriarchal norms that young people today, people like Ain, particularly young girls, are willing to take on traditional figures of authority? What does that reflect to you?
I think it augurs well for the young people because they are now getting themselves involved in a society. And I would say she's very courageous to speak up. And this is what is part of her right as a child, to speak up on what she feels is not right in the system.
Betty, where do you think it's coming from? And she used, interestingly, words like normalize. I mean, this is a language that even many adults don't use. Do you think she's getting this from popular culture? Could it be the family environment and the people that she's been exposed to? Or even civil society in its attempts, like AWAM, to raise awareness and impart a certain vocabulary to the larger public about these issues? Where do you think it's coming from?
I think this is partly coming from her own effort in getting to know what is going on in society. I can tell you that many students now are very aware of issues such as this, and knowing words like normalization and socialization, these are part of the words that they learn, especially if at their age of 17, 18, where they are in Form 5, Form 6. Definitely it is the exposure to the studies and the books they read, or even the news and things like what AWAM share in terms of advocacy.
Right.
So, yeah.
Betty, can I ask you, the male teacher's comments, would that be considered sexual harassment?
Well, to see whether it's considered as sexual harassment, we need to know the definition of sexual harassment. So sexual harassment is actually any conduct of a sexual nature that targeted at someone that makes them feel offended, it makes them feel threatened. And the key element here is it welcomed by the person? Does it consist of a threat? And the perception of the person, okay? So whatever the male teacher has said, it definitely offended Ain. It definitely was unwelcome. And in her own perception, it is sexual harassment because anything to do with rape is very sexual in nature.
She also mentioned rape culture, Betty. Could you explain to us what rape culture entails, what that means actually?
Well, in rape culture, basically, rape could be physical. But the thing is, once rape has happened, most likely the blame will fall onto the victim. And in our society, the rape itself only within the definition of rape, it's only women who will become the victim of rape. So therefore, it means that whenever rape takes place, most of the time, it is the woman that will be blamed, although she is the person that is experiencing the rape.
Betty, one of the things that's come out of this particular controversy are clearly differences of interpretation of what happened, right? And in the report about what was said in the classroom, there were suggestions that the boys in the classrooms laughed, thinking this was a joke. Now, is that a disconnect between how men perceive their speech and their assertions about what the world is like and what, say, a young woman might feel, or maybe even some of the boys in the class might have felt? Is that the point at which we need to start working? As you as an advocate, how do we shift it so that there are more people that are outraged than think this is a joke?
I think that at the moment, the community, the society is part of the reason why this whole thing is laughed at by the students, by the boys, because the way we socialize our children, our community, is that there is a gender difference, yeah? And of course, perception by boys and girls are different, but how do we understand the issue of gender-based violence, all right? Rape is never a joke. Rape is a hideous act that is an act of control, an act of power, and it's normally a privilege of the person doing the rape. So therefore, if we do not bring this understanding to men, to women, to the girls and the boys, to those who do not understand, they will laugh it off as a joke, or they will make fun of it, make light of it. But imagine the person who is experiencing rape. It is never a joke, not even if you say it, verbalize it. It can be just as bad as the physical action. So a lot of things in the way we are being brought up creates this miscommunication of understanding what is rape or what is the gender difference, basically, that is happening in the society.
Betty, just now you mentioned that, it occurs well that young girls, young people are more aware about, the patriarchy, about addressing misogynistic behavior. But I'm wondering about the role of teachers and the role of schools. Where do they come in terms of being the vanguard for change? So not waiting for young people to call out bad behavior, but rather being proactive in ensuring that cultures and patriarchal mindsets change in schools.
I think as teachers, they come from a perspective that they are the ones that is having the power to make decisions. So therefore, teachers should also have the ability to make change, because everything changes as time goes by. And definitely, they should be able to absorb in or to relate themselves to the current world situation where gender equality is very important, right? So as teachers, how they could make sure that the change take place is to upgrade and to learn about the issues. And there's a lot of people like AWAM and other NGOs that is very willing to share this knowledge with the schools. And another thing that the school can do is, if they know that such incidents of disclosure, like sexual harassment, rape is taking place, then there should be policies on safeguarding, which means that everyone in that school community looks after the interests of these people, the students and all. At the same time, as we look into issues like sexual harassment, it's not just within the school or the people, but your surrounding, like the public spaces, the bus stand, the children are transported by school buses. Are they safe within the school buses? Because a recent survey by a gender consultancy shows that sexual harassment takes place in public spaces as well. So as vanguards of change, they not only within the internal of the school, but also externally in the surroundings. And at the same time, I think one of the important things is your community comprised of young children, and children have rights. They should be involved, they should be listened to. And when children or students bring up issues such as this, it should be taken on a positive note that they are bringing up issues, and the school can actually work on it and make it part of their system to make change in the best interest of these students.
Right. Betty, thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. We appreciate your time. That's all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan, signing off the evening.
Thank you so much for watching and good night.